our good pal, 10 Tampa Bay WTSP Evan Closky, in his customary spot in front of the window. What's going on, brother? How
Yep.
are you?
Yeah, my porch spot. It's the best spot I got. I'm doing well. How you doing?
I'm good, man. What do you think of my deal?
Who are they trading for again?
Connor McDavid.
I'm good with it. Yeah, sign me up. I love Pointer. We'll see
I
you
know.
back here when we got to put your name in the Hall of Fame and all that stuff.
Right.
Appreciate it, Chernak. Love you, buddy. But if it's for Connor McDavid, I will pack your bags.
The
It's
only the only person that I wouldn't trade in that deal is Vasilevsky, just because that's just the only guy that is off limits. I wouldn't trade multiple guys. Like I wouldn't go, oh yeah, just take Point and Kucherov and Hedman. Like no, that's not the key. But if the hardest guy to replace on your team is going to be Andre Vasilevsky, not Kucherov,
yep.
not Point, not even Victor Hedman. It's Andre Vasilevsky. He is on that tier of goaltenders where it's every single year you are a Stanley Cup contender because he is between the pipes. We have seen goalies in the past. Even look at Carey Price when the Canadians went to the final against the Lightning. Like that team was not very good, but Carey Price willed that team to victory. We saw what Dominic Hasek did in the late 90s with probably the worst teams we've seen ever go to the Stanley Cup final. We talk a lot about football of the Brad Johnson and Trent Dilfer being kind of the worst quarterbacks to ever win a Super Bowl. But if the Buffalo Sabres win one of those cups with Dominic Hasek, like that's maybe one of the worst sports teams in the top in the Big Four league to ever win because of one guy, because of how good he was. But I think you're with me, man. Like you have an ability to do something like this. It doesn't come around very often. We saw it with Tom Brady. It's franchise changing,
You
and
do it.
it affects the team so much even after he leaves.
Yeah, and not to mention, like, look, I know that feels like painful to lose guys like Point and Chernak. And again, I'm not out here saying that they should throw him around all willy nilly either. But when it's Connor McDavid on the other side of it, you start to say scenarios in your head that you weren't originally thinking. And you still are going to have in that deal Sorelli, Hagel, I mean, McDavid, Kucherov. Like, I mean, the team is still, you got McDonough back there, Hedman. Vasi, like you still have a really good core around just a player that you really can't contain, and you have McDavid with Kucherov. Like, good luck having two lines that can handle that. Usually people have the shutdown line and can figure out, I mean, we've seen it with the Panthers. They've done an amazing job at limiting your best player. Well, try and do two of the best players in the NHL on one team. Like, it's not that easy. So, yeah, I mean, you sign up for that 10 times out of 10 and you deal with the pain. And then, yeah, I would say Vasi for sure. For Lightning fans, look at what the Panthers have done with Bobrovsky. I mean, that went from the worst deal out there to, I mean, Bob getting the job done at
Nobody
a
even
late
mentions
age.
nobody even mentions it anymore.
Yeah. So, I mean, the fact is, if you're like, oh, does Vasi still have it or whatnot, you can always look at Bob and just show like how much runway you can really have in this league. And it's not even like Vasi's like bad season. I would say not last year, but the year prior to that matched the downturn of what Bobrovsky was looking like when that contract was at its worst.
Right.
So I do agree with you. The other, outside of Vasi, maybe Hagel would be the other guy that I would
Mhm.
protect only because of price. Like
Right.
the talent plus his price tag with the cap going up. I mean, if they want Hagel, you're not going to get much else. You can get Isaac Howard and
Right.
Finley, whatever, but you're not going to get much else because Hagel's contract's going to allow you to do so much down the line. And that's sort of like Tampa Bay's Gustav Forsling
Mhm.
contract. It's like such a deal. It's really not fair that you have that caliber of a player at that price.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And if you make that deal, that hypothetical deal, right? Your lines are McDavid, Kucherov, and Gensel. Yuck. Sorelli, Hagel, and Bjorkstrand. Paul Geeky and Gonsalves. And then your fourth line is Yanni Gord, Gergensons, and maybe Dylan Duke. And then your back's
Mhm.
pretty much the same. You just put Crozier in for Chernak, and then you still have Andre Vasilevsky and JoJo. So it's not like you got to get rid of Isaac Howard, in my opinion, in a big deal, not in a one for one, not in a
Yep.
scenery deal, because, and I said this on the show yesterday, Isaac Howard is one of those guys where if you, it's almost like if you buy a DVD from the guy that comes by your local barbershop, you're not going to buy that one DVD of that movie that Some people said it was great. Some people said it was terrible. But if the guy goes, hey, I'll give you 3 for 10, you'll definitely put that in one of your 3 for 10 because it's worth the risk. Same thing with Isaac Howard. 1 for 1, there may be a little bit of a buyer beware from other teams, but if you link them up in another deal and you buddy them up with some of these other players, people go, yeah, it is worth the risk. So the value with him in a combined deal is going to be a lot higher than if it was by himself.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I would rather them hold on to him and just take the second rounder if it doesn't work out than do a 1-for-1 type of deal, because it's not going to net you the return that is really going to be a difference maker for this team. Again, this is a win now team, not so much worried about what they're going to be in 5 years. Don't care about that pick. Isaac Howard has to be flipped for a piece that can help this team, if not this year, then at least next year, when the team still this team still is going to have a window for the next 2 to 3 years at least. And this is probably the last year where money is kind of tight-ish. I mean, this is the best money situation they've been in quite some time, which isn't saying much with where they've been. But next year, it's going to really open up for them. And they still have pretty much, outside of like the McDonoughs, who, maybe you get McDonough back on a cheap deal, the same thing you kind of did with Yanni Gourde. And you're still able to add, especially with where McDonough is in his career. I'm sure he's going to want to stay in Tampa. I'm sure he would take less to at least know that if he's taking less, it's going to be invested into the team and to, make this team potentially win another cup. So they have, that's a thing. And when you look at the Connor McDavid trade, maybe that doesn't clear up the money so much this year, but it would allow the Lightning to still add significantly next year, because with Point and with Chernak in your iteration of the deal, I mean, you're probably only paying, first off, you still get McDavid on his current contract, which is probably a wash. And then you're going to have to pay him around $20 million, which won't be that much of a problem. You're pretty much just adding $5 million to the cap next year of what you would have been paying for Point and Chernak. So it really is like again, a no-brainer, because it doesn't even cripple you. You still have all your guys. And luckily for the Bolts, they signed everybody to such long term during the flat cap portion of time, 2, 3, 4 years ago, that these dudes aren't coming up until, the 2030s, 2029, 2030. So they still have a runway here. And we know JBB.
Yeah.
If he can, he's going to make a big move. He'll push the chips in. He's not scared. So I'm really excited. I do think they have a big move this offseason in them.
Because those 4 guys that I put, I mean, McDavid's making 12.5 this year. It's definitely going to go up higher than that. But that deal that I said, the 4 guys going the other way, that's over $15 million. So let's say you do make that move, you still have $3 million to play with for that other winger on the 4th line, right? That's
on top
that
of
guy's,
you got like $5 million still in the bank right now. Now you got to fill out some positions, but you can still spend a good chunk on one player and then fill out whatever you got to do with the rest of the money.
I think you got to make a move to really make a move on Florida. I think you have to. I mean, this team is good. Those guys the majority of them are probably going to come back. I'm excited to see what Julian does in the offseason. Shout out to Craig Kurtzman on his way to KC, raise up, going to play against our guy Jack Caglione and the Royals. That should be fun. Let's start with, Wander, because then we'll finish with the good stuff. Wander, the verdict comes out Thursday. I guess, the whole thing in my question about this entire thing was, if they try to just get him on like trafficking, it wasn't that. And now they limited the whole thing down to abuse and only 5 years. I think he's in big trouble. But I want to ask you on the parameters of, I know some people are saying, give Junior Caminero all this money. I don't think the Rays are going to give anybody a long-term deal between now and when the team sells, for a multitude of reasons. One being, there's still a little bit of a buyer beware when it comes to Wander Franco. And Stu's not going to sign off on any kind of deal like that before he leaves. Why? It doesn't make any sense, right? He's going to take care and do his thing and make sure that the deal, it's not going to sell for 1.7. That's what I said yesterday. There's at least 3 groups that are invested, and the group that I talked to is willing to go up to, if not beyond, $2 billion. So I don't see that this deal is going to be taken care of right away. But I also think that the Rays aren't going to spend big on anybody like a Junior Caminero for both of those reasons. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Junior, look, it does seem like Stu is going to sell. When, to who? I mean, as I'm sure you're mentioning, right? The exclusivity doesn't really rubber stamp this thing quite yet, right? He can always
Right.
pull out of it, reopen it.
Oh yeah.
Certainly that, certainly this is the group that Major League Baseball probably wants, especially with the lead partner of this deal being so tight with DeSantis, which I'm sure helps with
Mhm.
the politics to get a stadium done, so on and so forth. But there is a world where the Rays could certainly pay Junior Caminero, and that money would not kick in for 4, 5 years, like
Yeah.
significant money. I mean, the way that that's going to be weighted, Junior's still not going to see the majority of his money until that 4 years down the line. So it is still possible, and it could still be something where Stu says, not going to be my problem. Sure, why not? let
Hmm.
me let me win some headlines. Let me get let me go out like a champion, and waving around and have another press conference and say that I'm doing these things. And so who knows what could be behind that. I don't think it's going to be his problem in the end. So you know I always am of the belief, I don't think and I'm sure I'm not the one writing the check, so let me say that. But
Hmm.
I don't think it would be fair to use the Wander Franco stuff against Junior. I think that would, you have to separate what was and what is. And if you believe that Junior Caminero is the future, and you love the makeup of the kid and you believe in the kid, you got to do what's best for business and do right by the team. And if that's paying him his money to lock him into a long-term deal now, at about to be 22 years old on July 5, then you do it, and you understand that there is some risk, a la Wander Franco, which we still don't know what's going to happen with that contract. But hopefully that wouldn't hold them back from making a prudent decision. Because here's the thing that is, I think, most tough with Junior Caminero. Long term, he's probably a DH, right? He's probably a first base
Hmm.
DH type. I don't think he's a long term third baseman.
No.
So now you're kind of talking about Rafael Devers territory if he can produce like that. Well, the whole thing around Devers before the trade and after the trade has been, well, he's not really worth that money because the industry doesn't really value hitters like that anymore. Vlad Jr. is kind of that ilk. He just got paid a whole boatload of money, but Toronto has been
Hmm.
searching for a big fish for forever, and they really got pushed into a corner to say, hey, if we're going to lock this down, we're going to have to do it. But there's no doubt that Junior down the line, if he's producing like we think he can, is certainly going to be around the $300 million mark with a ton of term. So if you can do a Wander Franco type of deal and offer him something that's around 200 million for similar term to Wander, like that would be an amazing deal for the Rays.
Hmm.
And I mean, Junior Caminero can put that in the bank. I don't think Junior would take that deal because he sees the other deals coming down the chute
Right.
and understands that he can get paid in the long term. But yeah, I don't know. I think that all I can say is that if they are going to do a contract with him, they're going to have to do it at the end of this year. If not, the window is going to close. It closes quickly. So it's not a deal anymore for the player if you keep waiting. At that
Yeah.
point, they're one way closer to a fat arbitration number, which makes them feel more comfortable about waiting for free agency.
Yeah, and that's a scary word when it comes to Rays fans out there, because unfortunately, guys price themselves out of the Bay Area, and maybe that's something that changes with some of these ownership groups, right? If now the way that they operate their business, you'd have to think that that's going to improve regardless of who they sell to. I just don't see how a team or an owner out there is going to buy a group like this or buy a team like this and then try to operate it the same way Stu did. Right. Yeah. I don't see it being that way. They see the writing on the wall. They have their prerogative. They can do whatever they want. Right. They could operate it the same way. I don't know if you go into and correct me if you think I'm wrong here. I just don't know if you're a guy at this point. I'm not talking because obviously we could have said the same thing about Stu and Namoli, but I just think if you're a group that is interested in buying the Rays, you're not just buying it because, hey, look at what they were able to do, kind of getting the most juice out of this squeeze as possible. They look at it as almost, hey, we are not really accentuating the strengths that our fan base, that our environment, that our city has, like the Lightning do. Right. I have a feeling that whoever's going to be that next group is going to come in and go, okay, well, that's what you were doing, but we're going to operate like this. We're going to make more money. We're going to put more money into the payroll. We're going to, maybe care a little bit more about what your image is as an entire group. I just see whatever group it is going to be, they are going to operate. I know it's impossible for us to say, but do you agree with that sentiment that it's just they're going to try to do it in a different way, a little bit more Vinnick-esque than what we've seen with Stu?
Yeah, I mean, they have to, right? I don't think, here's the thing, the Rays aren't in like a terrible place. Like when you talk about the on-field product, really, you can come in, keep everybody who's doing their job, right? You don't have to like rework the baseball operations department.
Mhm.
All you got to do is add a little bit more money. Hey, Eric, instead of worrying about your max being around 90, 95 million, hey, bump that up. You like a free agent? Let's go. 150. Come to me. I want a big splash. So Eric's never had that green light before. He's had some sort of like nods of like we can raise here and raise there, but look at like Andrew Friedman, right? Andrew Friedman and the Dodgers, they don't spend all willy-nilly, but they spend the right way, and they're able to pull the trigger on deals when they have the value available. So it would allow Eric to do more. But overall, the way that they run the baseball ops is fantastic. As you mentioned, which I think would be the number one thing, is they got to fix the community image. They got to get themselves out there. They got to invest in the people of Tampa Bay. And I think you do that in twofold. One, there's kind of the Vinnick route. Hopefully with this deal, there's a development plan. You're building around the stadium. Something pretty is going to go up that a lot of people are going to go to. But also, there's the other side, on the baseball side. You take over the team. The first thing you do is you spend big on a free agent.
Right.
Boom. People say, hey, this is different. And then that kind of automatically starts your tenure in good favor with everybody. So, there is, with all that stuff, I really do think that the ownership group needs to come in and fix the off the field stuff with the Rays, more so than the on the field. On the field, you pay for a big free agent, and I think like you're good there, honestly, with the public. And then you start chipping away and doing some things that are just like, oh my God, the Rays never did this before, right?
Exactly.
So that's what I think it comes down to.
If Ha-Seong Kim gets called up in the next 2 weeks or so, who's getting sent down? Who do you think?
God, that's a great question. Like these are champagne problems for Eric Neander, but they sent down Meisner finally after hitting about $150 for 2 months, and I kind of like did a deep dive on this before the first injury for Kim, and really the name that kept popping up for me was Curtis Mead, and I don't love that. Like Curtis Mead has been significantly better since April. But he doesn't play as often. He's an infielder. Kim can play second base. He's also a righty. And I just don't know. And right now, Taylor Walls is hitting the cover off the ball like we haven't seen since like May 2022 or 23, whatever that start was. So what are you going to do? You're not going to get rid of Cabby. You're not going to get rid of any of your outfielders. That doesn't make any sense because Kim's an infielder. So when you look at the infielders, Aranda, Diaz, Lau, Caminero, who's going out of this group right now? The Rays don't even have room for Richie Palacios, and he's going right now with right knee soreness. He's probably going to be taking a little bit off of his rehab. But I'm wondering if Richie's going to get traded to be given an opportunity elsewhere, because the Rays are so log jammed, and Richie's role on the team is really what Caballero's doing right now, and there's redundancy. So I think there is a sense of like me just might have to go down in the short term while they continue to buy more time. So I don't think there's a better answer than that.
Yeah, and I wonder too. Like Chris Morel's the guy that I look at and I go, it's gonna take the Rays to just be like, we screwed this up. That you're going to have to admit that you had egg on your face and then move on, right? That's the only way. But he's been swinging a little bit better as well.
He's been better recently, and he provides pop. And
he does. It's the balance, right? Do you want to give up on a guy? And I don't want to say give up, but if you want to send a guy down in me that you've invested many years into, right? A guy that you've nurtured and you brought him up, he crushed it in spring training. Or do you want to admit that you screwed? Because there's no options for Morel, right? So you look at that whole thing, and you said champagne problems, but I don't think you get rid of Taylor Walls because of his glove, regardless of how. That's the perfect guy, right? That's the perfect guy to have at the back end of your roster, a switch hitter, a guy that can get bunts down. He can run a little bit, play short, second, and third. You can need him in a pinch. You put him in the outfield, but how many of those guys do you really need, right? Because Caballero, then you start looking at those guys. Maybe there's some redundancy there. So I don't know. It's a good problem to have. I think the team's playing a lot better. Pitching wise, what do you look at when you look at the starting rotation? If you could change anything about the starting rotation, what would you do? Because I know that there's some suggestions out there about certain guys and, some guys that have been struggling, some guys that maybe down in the farm have been pitching better. If you had your druthers, what kind of adjustments would you make?
First off, I mean, tonight's start is a huge one for Taj Bradley. The Rays have given him a lot of leash, and I think his underlying numbers were better than his performance for a little bit, and now I feel like it's becoming a little bit mental with him. I've been arguing for the past couple of starts through. He needs a reset. They really need to just calm him down, take it easy. Let's get back to the basics. But at this point, if Taj has a bad start tonight, I don't know how you can argue that he's not the worst option right now in this starting rotation, that Boyle's not better.
Last real quick. Last 7 games for Taj, 1-3 with a 5.94 ERA, and his just last 3 starts. The last one against Baltimore, an inning and a third, 6 hits, 6 runs. The start in New York against the Mets, only 4 innings there, 4 hits, no earned runs, but walked 4, and then he gave up 7 earned runs against Miami a couple of weeks ago at home. So yeah, I'm with you, man. I think part of the reason why, and I'll let you finish your thought on Boyle there. I think part of the reason why you haven't seen anything is because they've been playing pretty well outside of his starts. So they kind of just can sweep that under the rug a little bit and let him kind of learn on the job. Because remember, he was thrust into the starting rotation with all the injuries, but he's still only 24 years old. And you have an option like Boyle down there. I'm with you. I don't think a reset would be a terrible thing.
Yeah, so that's my thing is, he when he got hit on the ankle after New York, I said, throw him on the IL.
Right.
Great excuse. They did it with Pepio last year to manage his innings. Pepio got hit in the ankle. He was fine. Needed a little bit of a break. They gave him a breather, and boom, away he went. It's just like you don't have to send him down in like an embarrassing fashion. You can reset him, bring up Boyle. The problem is, and I think what the fear is probably for Eric Neander and company, they bring up Boyle and he throws another great game. How can you send him down? How are we going to wiggle him in? So I think they're really, this was like the Chandler Simpson thing. And I said this before the season, when you bring up Chandler Simpson, fans are going to fall in love with him. You're going to realize he's a difference maker, and it's going to be really hard to send him down. Now, they did it, but they reversed course 3 weeks later. So there's only so much you can do in these scenarios once you kind of allow the fans to see everything to really convince people otherwise. And so to me, if you're building the best team, and I think they're just trying to get to the trade deadline so they can evaluate everything and probably move one of their starters to help in another area on this team. But for right now, if we ignore all that, I would say you replace Joe Boyle with Taj Bradley, and you got a better starting rotation right now. Originally, I was of that. I was scared for Shane Baz. I did not love when his slider was not good. He was really ineffective to I think righties, which was a problem. Now he's kind of mixed in a cutter, which has been successful in the short term right now, and so maybe he might be able to get back on track with that. But right now it's I always say this about Eric. The Rays trend on patience and stubbornness, and you just never know where it's the right call, where patience paid off, and where it's the wrong call of where you were too stubborn to understand what was in front of you. And I think we're kind of getting there with Taj Bradley.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I mean, look at the Buccaneers, right? I think that's what most teams do. I think that's what most successful franchises, that's how they operate, right? They get into a situation where it's always easy for everybody on the outside to be like, get rid of this guy, but you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. You don't know what's going on in that guy's life, right? I understand there's an on-field, on-ice, on-court product, but remember what this guy Todd Bowles did a couple years ago. It took a while for him to pull the trigger on JTS before he switched over to Yaya Diaby. It took him a while before, he got rid of Ryan Neal and started replacing them with some other guys. The whole Devin White, KJ Britt thing. You want to be loyal to a fault. You don't want guys to panic and make this snap judgment, and then it's like, oh my God, we gave up on a guy too soon. Before I let you go, I want to ask you, this is kind of off the kind of random topic. Do you watch a lot of sports TV now, as far as opinion based and the debate shows and things like that?
Yeah, I see it from time to time during I get to my desk around like 2:33, and then there's always like I'm waiting for something. I'm waiting for our games or whatever. So it's in the background, white noise kind of
but
stuff.
It's in the background, right? And this is the thing I wanted to talk about, after I got off with you is, I'm just so turned off nowadays by these opinion pieces of, everybody's got, Emmanuel Acho wants to tell everybody why Kevin Durant is not clutch, or Joy Taylor wants to tell everybody why Caitlin Clark is only popular because of Angel Reese, and Bob Myers and Stephen A. Smith are just yelling at each other. And I find myself, somebody that's involved in this industry, becoming less and less intrigued, or even I couldn't care less what these people have to say. Just give me the games. That's all I really care about. And when things like that come on, if I want people yelling back and forth and drama, that's why I watch WWE, because I know that's what it's about, right? I know that's what it's about. Like this stuff where people are just coming up with hot takes. And this is why I think you and I get along really well. When you get up to the board and you and David do what you guys do, like, it's not, hey, hot take central. It's, hey, let's take a deeper dive. Let's be educational and informative.
Yeah.
So when I come up with the Connor McDavid thing, I'm not just speaking out of my ass. Like, I actually did my homework and try to do some thorough research on this. Do you think that that's changed over the years as a person that's, grown up loving sports?
Yeah, for sure. My number one complaint about all this stuff is how so many people in the national media and these opinion shows have dumbed down the product. And it's really just trying to poke the bear at people, right? Like, I mean, you just brought up two things. Those are negative angles. Like, why do I have to hear about, like, Stephen A. Smith after the Thunder won the title? Why do I have to hear about, oh, well, they were a good team, but they weren't a great team, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, they weren't one of the best of all time. Who cares?
Yeah, like who gives a crap? Like, they won the title. Why do we have to be negative? Why do we have to be? And there's difference between, like, people, I think, claim that I'm negative a lot of the times. I'm critical. I analyze. Yeah. Maybe I overanalyze, and I can accept that complaint about me. But the fact is, I'm not speaking out of my ass. I'm speaking from, hey, I'm looking, like, to start the year, for example, Zach Littell, after his first couple starts, was doing really well. And I said, I'm really concerned about Zach Littell. I'm looking at his splits against lefties. I'm looking at his peripherals. I'm looking at this. I'm looking at that. Right. And he kept shoving it. And then at some point, it's like, well, guess I'm wrong. Like, I don't know. I don't know how he's doing it, but he's doing it. But in the end, it's not like I'm saying, oh, don't believe this guy. He's not as good. This is what I'm seeing. This is why I'm saying it. This is why I have this opinion. It's not just like, oh, hey guys, let's rally around a room. We don't have much to talk about. Hey, let's talk about Dak's legacy on June 14th. It's like, it's lazy TV. It's low hanging fruit. It's how can I piss you off? And to me, that's not the world that I live. I always say this, like, it's the industry I'm in. But if that's how I'm going to make money, I'm not going to be in this for the money. Right. I can't do it. So I think, like, you, me, and there's tons of people out there who do this the right way. There are a bunch of people who are actually, I guess maybe we call them influencers now, or people who aggregate their own social, their own content, like yourself, who do it kind of the right way, and people fall in line with that. It's just a lot of networks just try to, they go for the low hanging fruit to make money. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't like it. And for me, I want you to educate fans why this is your take, and stop just pummeling people for no reason. Right. Like, I don't get that. I mean, I do, because saying, like, hey, good job, this is a good team, doesn't make money. But I think it really just dumbs down the product. And I think viewers, anybody who's listening, like you're so much smarter than what these execs, what these people who make these opinions, you're so much smarter than what they think. Like they think
Exactly.
like we got to dumb down this product because the audience isn't smart enough. It's like, no, no, no. The audience is actually much smarter than you think, and they will gravitate towards it if you do it the right way. That's kind of like for me personally, someone who I really like who's on a national stage, Dan Orlovsky, right? Sometimes he kind of gets thrown into the takey world, but when he's breaking down this film, when he's doing the 3D stuff, like
Yeah.
I can't tell you how hard it is to communicate and do all that stuff in television and not stumble or like he is so smooth with it. But I always walk away from his segments when he's doing that stuff feeling educated about, oh man, like, this, how this defense, how he looked at this play and all that stuff. Like that's the stuff that I like. And typically if enough people did that, I think we would all see the game a much better way, whether that's hockey, baseball, basketball, whatever sport you want to throw out there, football. So yeah, I mean, you and I are on the same page with that, and it definitely it's a sad state of affairs, to be honest, but it's just the way that it's gone.
It's like the 5 o'clock news, right? Let's start with the trauma. Let's start with the killings,
The death and despair.
The death and despair, which is crazy, and that's why I think the class of Scott Van Pelt. I mean, he goes about it in his own way. Late night. I mean, he's the only guy that I'll definitely won't turn it off, right? Because it's going to be the best thing I saw today, right? That's his thing, and he's trying to promote the good things in sports, and that's the reason why we got in there in the first place.
And he's honest, right? It's not like all takes are like, hey, like this team does so well and this team does so well. No, he's critical of people sometimes. But it's when it's topical, when it comes up,
right,
and when there's stuff behind it, and when he does those, one big take or whatever it's called, he devotes time to it to explain it. It's not just let's fling crap at a wall and ad lib and say a bunch of things that like I don't need to hear Stephen A. Smith talk about baseball. I'm sorry, you don't know baseball. You don't spend any time on baseball. You're not a baseball guy.
Yeah.
So when you give me takes on baseball, I don't give a crap. Like I don't like. It's just like it'd be like me giving, like I covered the San Antonio Spurs when I was there, so I certainly know basketball. But like right now, I'm so ingrained in the other three sports that basketball is the last take that I really should be out there in the forefront making. So it's just you got to, a lot of times you have to know what your strengths are, and I just feel like a lot of people they get in this industry because like Stephen A. Smith was so tapped into basketball, had such great takes there and had such a feel for it. And then you start to try to splinter him off into different arenas, and that's when the bullshit starts to fly.
Yeah, you're right. Because I don't want to hear what he has to say about boxing or MMA. No, I don't want to hear anything. You're mispronouncing people's names. Like, I don't want to hear anything like that.
Exactly.
Evan Closky, 10 Tampa Bay, E Closky WTSP. Brother, we could do 5 hours every time you come on.
Every time.
I appreciate you, my brother. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, I appreciate you too. Have a good one.
Thanks, buddy.